right. Good morning, everybody. All right, I like that. Well, welcome to the inaugural SoCal Alt-Car Conference Ride, Drive, and Expo. My name is Casey Daly. I'm going to be serving as your MC today. I also serve as the Director of Energy and Environmental Programs for the Western Riverside Council of Governments, or WRCOG. WRCOG is a joint powers authority organized as the Council of Governments, consisting of the County of Riverside, 18 cities, 2 regional water districts, the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, and the Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. Our actions and activities are guided by our members, recognizing that issues related to growth are not constrained by city or county boundaries. WRCOG focuses on regional matters important to the future of Western Riverside County. The WRCOG Economic Development and Sustainability Framework has served as a roadmap for implementing the agency's regional programs and projects since 2012 when it was adopted. The primary focus are on the areas of the economy, education, energy, environment, health, and water. So when we learned that the Alt-Car Conference, Ride, Drive, and Expo was looking to move inland after about 12 years in Santa Monica, we raised our hand and said, yes, please. This fits right in line with our mission, core, and values. So we're excited to host this event today in beautiful downtown Riverside. We're grateful for the City of Riverside for hosting us. We're very grateful for the Air Resources Board and Mary Nichols for their participation. So before we get into it, I just want to do a quick outline of today's events. So we're going to have a wonderful keynote speaker, and then we're going to have 2 moderated panels. After that, we're going to break for lunch, head upstairs to the exhibition hall, where we're going to get to see a number of vehicles that are on display up there from Nissan, Honda, and a number of others. I do want to thank our sponsors for participating, because without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to make this event possible. Those sponsors include Honda, Nissan, Veloz, Southern California Edison, South Coast Air Quality Management District, UC Riverside, Southern California Association of Governments, California Vehicle Rebate Project, and we also would like to thank Electrify America for sponsoring the breakfast this morning. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host mayor, Mayor Rusty Bailey of the City of Riverside. Mayor Bailey has been the mayor of Riverside since 2012. He attended West Point, where he earned a degree in political science. He then served in the Army, after which he pursued a lifelong dream of public service. During his career, he's worked for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Executive Office of the President, and the Riverside County of Economic Development. Branching out, he obtained a master's degree in public policy from UCLA and a teaching credential, which he has used as a high school teacher. He credits his time as a high school teacher with his inspiration for public office, first serving on city council and then becoming mayor of Riverside. So please join me in welcoming Mayor Rusty Bailey.
It doesn't get much better than being the mayor of your hometown. That's the bottom line for me. And since we're behind a little bit, I'm going to try to be brief, but when you give a politician a microphone, you never know what's going to happen. Who was out at the Memorandum of Understanding? Is that MOU? Who was out at the MOU signing? All right, a few of you. So I can use those lines again, since all of you weren't there. I had some good lines, good one-liners there. But again, good morning. My job is to welcome you all to Riverside, to the capital of inland Southern California. And I think you understand that when you're here and you move around town or check out the various entities that are here that are going to speak to you this morning and today. A special thank you to Casey Daly, to WRCOG for bringing the Alt-Car Expo to Riverside, and also to our staff. I'm looking around at city staff, Moses Lopez, Tracy Sato, for helping to gather this group of alternative fuel vehicle aficionados today. You've come to the right place. Riverside is indeed becoming the center of clean air and clean fuel technology. The California Air Resources Board, if you haven't heard, chose Riverside as the location for its Southern California headquarters. You can see the building going up down University to Iowa Avenue on the UCR campus. $400 million plus investment. Thank you, State of California. And this is going to make Riverside the epicenter the epicenter of clean air and clean fuel technology, not just in SoCal, but it's world class. It's a world class center, and we are very proud to have them in our city. So already CARB is generating an interest in Riverside from companies focused on clean fuel transportation. But what makes Riverside special from a clean fuel technology standpoint is the presence of UCR's College of Engineering, Center for Environmental Research and Technology. Anybody heard of CSERT before? All right. So for many decades, CSERT has been analyzing fuel emissions, driving habits, and more recently, smart technology along the Innovation Corridor, University Avenue, to help drivers use less fuel. So you've come to the right place, the bottom line. You've come to the right place. Riverside prides itself as a city of arts and innovation. We have always been innovators and early adopters of clean fuel technology. We were among the earliest cities to provide subsidies, rebates to employees and residents who wanted to buy hybrid before they were cool. We also converted our city vehicles to run on clean fuels. Today we have one of the largest clean fuel city fleets in the nation. And actually we were at one point #1 green fleet in North America. So again, we are innovators. We are proud of our sustainability roots and heritage. And just recently, the hydrogen fuel cell car ride-sharing service StrataShare, anybody heard of StrataShare? Chose Riverside to offer its fleet of clean fuel vehicles. So the momentum continues in Riverside. But during this summit, and I want to remind you of a summit, right? What happens when you get to the summit? What happens? You get to look around. You get to enjoy the experience a little bit, because it's all downhill from there, right? I don't know. Mary's got a keynote, so she gets to follow this up. But take the time to enjoy being on the mountaintop with others and to share experiences, share knowledge. That's why we're here today. And then to go back down into the valley and put that knowledge to use. And I think you know why. So that's it from me. I'm going to introduce someone I have true respect and gratitude for. She's laughing because she knows what I'm going to say already. But you were on the Rolling Stone? See? A rock star of air quality, a champion of the environment. She knows Riverside just as well as the mayor does. She might be able to tell you some of the history she has with Riverside. And she's not afraid to take on the president. Would you welcome the chair of California Resources Board, Mary Nichols?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. I'm getting kind of used to being called a rock star, and I'm getting ready to take the guitar lessons to go along with it. I already sing, but I never did learn how to play the guitar. So this is not the first time I have been to an alt car expo over the years. I remember when this all began, I believe back in 2005, and the first of these, at least that I am aware of, was out in Santa Monica in an industrial facility there. And it wasn't very big, although they did have 3 different models of hybrids, 1 natural gas car, a handful of electric Ford Rangers, and a lot of experimental vehicles and conversions. And those were most of what you saw. Being from Los Angeles, I know a few celebrities that were involved in the early days of the environmental movement. A friend of mine, Ed Begley, who was one of the earliest adopters and champions of electric vehicles, showed up for an event in my backyard with his electric vehicle. We had to make space for it in the driveway so we could run a cord through a window to a plug so he could get enough power to drive back home again, because he had to actually go over the hill from the LA Basin over into the San Fernando Valley. So that was a pretty big deal, and everybody went out to look at it. But that finding a plug was really, really important. Then things began to change a little bit, but kind of slowly. Tesla introduced their Roadster in 2008, a truly aspirational sports car, $100,000 deposit that you had to put down. One of my former bosses, Arnold Schwarzenegger, got one of those, and I had a chance to drive it around a block. But still, I was able to get my hands on it, and it was amazing. And then in 2010, the Leaf appeared, and that was the first truly ordinary car. I mean, something that looked like a real car, that drove like a real car, and that people began to actually take a look at buying. And that was the year that CARB began its first clean air vehicle rebate project as well. And then the Volt came along, fuel cell vehicles made an appearance, and in 2012, CARB adopted a ZEV mandate, which really gave a boost to the requirements for manufacturers to start shipping and selling vehicles with no emissions from the tailpipe by 2025. The Alt-Car Expo has been involved in every step of this development, including a role hosting the national debut of the Chevy Volt, the national reveal, as it was called, of the Ford 150 CNG vehicle, and the global debut of the Honda plug-in, as well as the kickoff of the Leaf and the Toyota RAV EV tours. So, Alt-Car, you deserve a lot of credit for having been a partner in this whole venture from the very start. But let's look at where we are today. Today, there are 46 models of electric vehicles to choose from. That is pure electric plug-in vehicles. California has 655,000 EVs on the roads, and that is, for better or for worse, I'd like to brag about it, but we are half of all of the electric vehicles in the country. The rest of the country, in many cases, is looking to try to catch up with us. States now beginning to adopt their own ZEV mandates in an effort to get to where we are today. And we also have a growing network of hydrogen filling stations at 41, headed towards 100, and more than 20,000 electric charging stations that are available to the public, a growing network of DC fast chargers. Electrify America has helped us in this effort enormously, a sign of how sometimes something good can come out of bad, because in the very beginning, Electrify America was formed out of the Volkswagen diesel scandal. The company decided to pull back, change its whole approach to life, and create a subsidiary designed to push for electric vehicles and all electric vehicles in the future. Electrify America has really been a huge partner in this effort. And the goal, again, is to make it possible to travel around this state in cars that have more capacity, longer driving range, and are truly available for all purposes, not just to come over to your neighbor's house and plug in and show off. So it's encouraging to see how far we've come. Back in 2010, there were fewer than 100 EVs sold in the whole year. Last month, more than 15,000 EVs were sold in California. We're finding that with the rebates that we have available, that certainly is an important contributor. In some ways, the most interesting development in the last couple of years is the fact that we now have cars that have been around long enough so that their owners are selling them and moving on to their next generation electric vehicle. And the used EV market is a very active, vibrant market. Today, about 1 in every 12 new car sales is an EV, and in some metropolitan centers, it's about 1 in 5. But while I'm here to tell you that this is encouraging, and I think we should all take a lot of credit for the work that's gone into this, it's not nearly enough. We are at 12% of the state's official goal of 5 million EVs by 2030, and even though the trajectory is going in the right direction, upward, we're not going to get there at the rate that we're going right now. We need to do more. We need to sell more EVs to more people in more parts of the state, and we need to start doing it soon, because we can't meet our climate and clean air targets without a massive transformation to EVs on the roads. So with all our existing programs in place, the regulations, the cleaning up of the trucks and buses that we're now working on, the incentives for low carbon fuels, we're still not going to get there by the end of the next decade at the rate that we're going. And it's Riverside and other urban areas of the state that will pay the price if we can't clean up the urban air pollution. So this is not just about our responsibilities as global citizens and our desires to have an impact on the horrific problem of worldwide global warming. It's also our very own health that we're talking about here. So looking at the data, you just cannot escape the conclusion that nothing less than a wholesale transformation, not only to the composition of our fleet itself, to the types of vehicles, and the way we move around ourselves and our stuff, the cargo, the things that we buy, is going to be necessary, and that we have to be starting on that path like right now. So as I mentioned before, we need cleaner fuels. The low carbon fuel standard provides incentives for that and has helped to pave the way for more public charging. Seeing charging available, having fast charging available is a critical element of building a market for people to see that these vehicles are actually here and to think, I could drive one of those myself. Because all too often, whenever I'm driving an electric vehicle or a fuel cell vehicle for that matter, people want to stop, they want to talk about it, and they're always, could I possibly live with one of these things? I don't know. I drive too far. I have too many things to do along the way in the day. I just am not going to be able to do it. Now, I feel like I should be, getting training as a salesperson. I do my best, but there's nothing like peer pressure and seeing one in your neighbor's yard, in neighbor's driveway, or parked in front of the house to really make a difference in what people begin to see as possible. So we need the vehicles out there. We need people to see them. We need people to have a chance to drive them. Events like this expo are a very critical part of that kind of an educational process. But along with the fuels and the vehicles, we also have got to tackle a much more difficult, elusive target, and that is better city design that makes it possible for people to leave the car at home or only take it out once in a while, or be part of a ride-sharing service, or subscribers to some form of car on demand that they don't even own. The auto industry is well aware that this trend is underway, and every one of the major companies is investing or buying companies to help them think about or rethink about mobility in the urban context. It's particularly interesting and challenging here in California, and in a sense we're kind of like a microcosm for much of the rest of the country, because while we have important urban centers, including the city of Riverside, where we are right now, we also have large stretches of quite rural areas in our state. And we have land use patterns and housing costs that push people further and further away, make the commute a bigger and bigger part of people's lives, mean all kinds of social implications of that, which are not good in terms of the amount of time that people have to spend getting to and from their jobs. And the lack of time to be with their families and involved in the communities where they live. It also, of course, increases and continues the pattern of growing vehicle miles traveled and growing emissions of air pollution and greenhouse gases. So we're just really beginning, although there have been people out there, planners and environmental leaders for years, telling us that this is what we needed to do. But we have many reasons why it's hard, why it's been difficult to grapple with some of these issues. Local governments guard their land use authority jealously. It's critical to their well-being and to their sense of ownership of their communities. They don't want the state coming in and telling them how to design their cities. My neighborhood in Los Angeles, which is really in the heart of Los Angeles, an old 1920s area, but it's characterized by private individual homes and people who love their homes. had yard signs in it this year for the first time in my memory of anything, even a presidential election. There were yard signs urging people to oppose a state legislative effort that was intended to require cities to allow for greater density around transit stations. It was sponsored by a San Francisco legislator with a lot of support from urban planning and environmental organizations who saw the need for greater density and some of the difficulties of achieving that given the prices and patterns of urban design. The author of these bills was treated as though he was trying to take away people's homes and cars, and it was a really brutal political battle in California, which he lost very decisively. He hasn't given up on the idea, but has got to go back to figure out how to politically make it acceptable for the state to set some kind of standards or goals or something that are going to tie together housing and the transit systems that we're all interested in trying to help support, and do it in a way that will help with air quality and help with our global warming goals as well. So we're really at the front end of this effort, I think. There's progress, certainly, particularly in the marketing of the vehicles again, and then marketing of clean fuels as something that's not just exotic. Again, I think maybe we should even reconsider a name change. You know, the cars that we're talking about here are not really alt anymore. They're it. They are cars. They're what cars are right now. More. Same way we're starting to think about petroleum, and as gas stations disappear from corners because there isn't as much need for gasoline, even with the additional driving. Imagined for other more interesting purposes at the civic level. And we have a lot of petroleum that's being extracted and refined in our state from well under the ground using very old technologies. And although the industry is innovative in a technical sense and they find new and more efficient ways to get the petroleum out and to get it to us, the fact is that the internal combustion engine is clinging to life, and increasingly, I think, even the people who are the most invested in it are questioning whether its future is here now or how soon it's going to come to an end. Unfortunately, we're still in the throes of this transition, and the mayor's introduction of me as taking on the Trump administration was correct in the sense that we are locked in a legal battle with the federal government over an effort to revoke our state's historic waiver to set our own emission standards for greenhouse gases and air pollutants. And the idea behind this, and it's one that's been dear to the hearts of some of the most conservative think tanks in the country, is that we ought to be preempted because this whole Clean Air Act thing is really not relevant to setting standards that might have an impact on fuel economy. And since, by definition, anything you do that results in fewer greenhouse gas emissions also is going to have an effect on fuel economy, that means we're treading on turf that belongs to the Department of Transportation, to NHTSA, and therefore the whole Clean Air Act doesn't even apply. This is an argument that's been tried before and has lost, and it doesn't, frankly, to us, even make very much sense. But the fact is that it's been raised now, and so we have to go back to court again. We are blessed with not only a terrific legal team at CARB and the Attorney General's office under our Attorney General, Javier Becerra, but also the support of 23 other states, including some states that have adopted California's standards and some that haven't, but that just think it's important that we be able to move further and faster than the federal government may need to go. But the logic behind this whole effort is what really I think is the most distressing, because we could have a jurisdictional fight, we could have a political fight, a policy fight, but EPA's own analysis shows that the standards that they are trying to now revoke will save consumers money, that they have produced a generation of vehicles that are safer than the ones that were there before, that we don't need to make cars pollute more or use more gasoline in order to be safer. We know these things as facts. This is not something that we are just hypothesizing about. We have evidence based on real cars out there in the world, and a lot of help and support from our partners and friends in the research community, including, as was mentioned before, CSIRT, to back us up on this. And we also have common sense. I mean, let's face it, we all know that cars could be cleaner, and that it would be good for us if they were cleaner. The industry itself is not supporting what the administration is trying to do here. They're standing back, hoping not to make anybody mad, but the fact is that they're all investing in the kind of future that we see here in California, and it's because they know that we are the market that they're aiming for, on their way towards trying to become long-term relevant players in what is increasingly a global market. So this month, we have made some progress again. We're not stopping or just focusing on fighting with the federal government. We are pursuing our own agenda here in spite of all of that. Our Governor Newsom has remained committed and ready to continue making progress in this area. He announced a new executive order just a couple weeks ago. It's designed to leverage the state's pension investment portfolio, which is a $700 billion portfolio, because we are a very big state with a lot of people who are entitled to pensions. And he's going to put those assets to work in order to advance California's climate leadership. And he's ordered a focus on transportation investments to put them near housing, so that Caltrans is, really taking a new look at what their mission is, and their mission includes managing congestion, not just by building more roads to try to allow more people to drive, but on looking at innovative strategies that actually encourage alternatives to driving. We've got continuing investments coming from our cap and trade program that takes some of the allowances that are now required by industry and uses the revenue from that, and we're putting that back into more incentives for electric and fuel cell vehicles, battery electrics and fuel cells. And we're working on trying to secure long-range funding to drive a really massive increase in sales of these vehicles. So our goal, and we think it's one that many others share, but we're really trying to articulate it in a more cohesive and integrated way, is to move the needle on clean vehicles and to make sure that California continues to be a leading market for the cleanest vehicles. And we're trying to use all of the regulatory and economic tools that we know we have, and some that we don't know that we have yet, that we're going to be trying to invent with help from, I'm sure, some of the people in this room, in order to continue to be on the right side of history as well as the law. So I'm looking forward to continuing this effort, to seeing more and different, exciting new vehicles that fit every class and category of need, and being part of a real historic shift, which I think is underway right now, again with Riverside as one of the major hubs of it, to change our whole approach to our transportation system that makes it one that supports clean air and a cleaner planet. So we can do all of that, only a few years, I'm sure, and I look forward to working with all of you in this room. Thank you very much.
So I think we might have to nominate next year's event to be called the Clean Car Expo. I like that. I like that. Apologize to everybody in the back of the room for standing. We do have some seats up front for those that are standing in the back, and we do have some more seats that'll be coming in momentarily. So apologies. It's good to see the standing room only. We'll definitely plan for a bigger room next year. We're going to take just a quick break while we get ready for our next panel. So if anybody needs to refresh, use the facilities, or get a fresh cup of coffee, feel free to do that. And I'd like to invite the folks for our first panel to make your way up to the table here.
Hey, Wayne! Oh man, my voice is still a little, yeah. I have lots of. Oh, it was an awesome game. It was a game. I didn't have to pay for it. My cousin. So my cousin. All right.
So I'm going to introduce you.
Okay. When I gotta
And
see.
then you can sit over there if you like.
There was a fourth.
There is a.
Yeah, there's somebody missing. Are you Brett? Yeah. So Ken is missing. Ken is missing.
Oh.
So we need four. I'll be standing behind.
Ken was just walking by.
Oh, so we have Ken.
Yeah, he's here.
Okay. Yeah. Do we have? Okay. 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 Okay.
You guys aren't going to be walking up. I guess when I read the bios, you're obvious. Matt, Ken, and Brett, perhaps.
Okay.
Could at least raise their hand.
Sure. We need to share a microphone. Right? Do we have three?
Probably. Are you?
I am, yes. I just wanted to get like your dialogue on what ideas, and I'm good. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I just, I don't want to start it off with, I can,
No, I'm good. I did.
go further down. There's no way we're going to get through all the parts. There's no way.
I did a little scenarios.
Yeah. Something to give to everybody. These are apparently you get a free Tesla for a day.
I'm getting a Tesla.
Oh, I get to drive them all the time.
Yeah.
In my role, I get to drive them all.
Are you handing out Teslas? Is what it is?
I wish.
This is we'll announce it, but these are you get one. You get it's for an overnight with Tesla. Overnight with
So I
Tesla.
get a date with
You get a date with Tesla. I know. How special, right?
no, right? I don't have.
I have one of those spaces. I do have an identity smart, but he works for Salesforce. Based out of India. It's possible.
Yeah.
Get your Tesla card.
Okay.
Just stick this in there. if you don't mind.
Not at all.
You're not gonna start quite yet.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Brett. I work with Nissan. I've been in the It takes a village.
Were you the one that asked about the dress?
Yeah.
You know, I had another event this morning.
That one guy, you know, he was a,
Academics never wear ties.
Yeah, my dad was acting. And so,
didn't work more color in his face already.
yeah.
One of my staff has a bow tie on, so that's
I
taking
saw
it.
a guy with a pink tie that was gorgeous this morning
Oh, nice.
in honor of breast cancer awareness. Complimenting him on it.
As a guy, we don't have all the options like the ladies do. We've got shirts, we've got jackets, and socks, and ties.
I got a whole pink suit for next week.
Really?
A pink suit at a board hearing. All the
Nice.
board members and us are all going to be wearing pink.
Nice.
So I
That's awesome.
saved my pink. I thought about wearing it today, but I'm like, what if I spill something on it?
Yeah, having it at a board meeting, that pops. That really pops.
It is a pastel pink. It's not hot.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. How you doing, Mayor? Yeah.
We can't do ones. The big ones are
Thank you, mate.
every generation. I drove the prior version of the one pedal driving is the way to go. It's nice. It actually is. It's easy. I do the Chevy Bolt, and it's, I mean, I don't even use that brake. I mean, yeah, the kid runs out and uses the brake. It's really efficient.
Chicks.
What's nice is that instead of focusing like this, it's a neat thing to focus like this because it's really helps me out. And it's hard to explain these to other drivers. Sure.
I'm going to need that too.
Did you ever work in the summer office?
Nope. Been to the summer house.
All right, everybody, if we can work our way back to the seats, we're going to get our first panel going here in just a couple minutes or a minute or so. So you want to mosey on down. We got some seats up front. Don't be shy. Or be shy, that's fine. Whatever works best. All right. Well, welcome back after a wonderful keynote address by Mary Nichols. I want to thank her tremendously for being here today. Today we have our first panel. Today is titled Innovative Mobility Solutions, Light to Heavy Duty Product and Best Fleet Practices. Today's panel is going to be moderated by Annette Hebert. Annette was appointed as the Assistant Executive Officer of the California Air Resources Board on February 21st, 2019. In this capacity, Ms. Hebert serves as lead for CARB's new Southern California headquarters, guiding the work of over 350 engineers, scientists, policymakers, and support staff. In addition, Ms. Hebert will continue to work with the Deputy Executive Officer Steve Cliff to oversee CARB's extensive mobile source program focusing on emissions certification and compliance, mobile source emissions warranties, and various mobile source testing and field assessment tasks based at the El Monte Hagensmith Laboratory. That's easy to say. Hagensmith. Hagensmith. Okay. Excuse me. Ms. Hebert will also lead a workforce and facility transition planning in advance of the move to the Southern California headquarters located here in Riverside, which is near the UC Riverside campus with an expected opening of Q1 2021. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Annette Hebert.
Good morning. As Mayor Bailey pointed out this morning, we have a beautiful blue sky day today, but I think a lot of us can remember when it wasn't so blue. And I wanted to make a point not to take away from Mary Nichols' rock star status or the CARB staff rock star status, but it really is the leaders of communities and industry and counties and cities that work together to achieve the ultimate goal of cleaning up our air and achieving our goals for climate change reduction, impacts in climate change. So it really takes all of us. You know, CARB pushes, but it is all of the community and all of the state and everybody and the leaders that come together and make it happen. And as Mary pointed out, light duty, we've expanded tremendously in advanced technology vehicles, zero emission vehicles in particular. Heavy duty, we're still evolving. We still have a ways to go. But you know, even though we have a blue sky day today, we all still see the brown skies now and then, and we all are aware of the climate change impacts that are happening to us. The wildfires, the droughts, the more extreme, tropical storms, not here in California, but so we still have a lot of work left to do, and it takes all of us to do that together. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things that Mary didn't mention, and that's the transportation sector still makes up 84% of the NOx emissions as a whole and 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions as a whole. Now, this is the whole transportation sector. Then when you take a subdivision of that and look at on-road light-duty trucks and cars and heavy-duty trucks, it makes up like 61% of that total for NOx emissions and 90% of the greenhouse gas emissions. 90% of the greenhouse gas emissions of the transportation sector, which is 39%. So obviously we still have a lot of emission reductions to get at for both air quality attainment as well as climate change. So what's next? Well, one of the things we've done today is bring up some of our leaders of the communities, of the state, of the fleets, that all work together to make all these things happen. So I want to introduce them one by one. First, we have Matt Barth. Matt Barth is the Yeager Family's Professor at the College of Engineering, University of California, Riverside. He is part of the Intelligent Systems faculty in Electrical and Computer Engineering and is also the director for the Center for Environmental Research and Technology, or CSERT, as a lot of us know it by, UCR's largest multidisciplinary research center. Professor Barth is also serving as UC Riverside's Faculty Director of Sustainability, where he manages a variety of academic sustainability programs on campus. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ken Marco. Ken Marco is a senior manager of fleet sustainability for Frito-Lay North America, where he leads sustainability initiatives to improve fuel economy and reduce emissions. Ken is currently the project manager for a transformative effort that will showcase sustainability in manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution operations by introducing emerging pre-commercial zero and near zero emission technologies for freight operations. Ken, welcome. Brent Richardson is from Nissan North America, and he is the manager of commercial sales of electric vehicles. He also has a staff of business development managers located in select territories across the country. So welcome, Brent. Finally, we have Jessica Satoris, is the Environmental Conservation Supervisor for the City of Colton. She supervises the development and implementation of new conservation and environmental programs related to energy efficiency, water conservation, and greenhouse gas mitigation. She represents the Colton Electric Utility and the Public Benefits and Electric Vehicle Working Groups at the Southern California Public Power Authority. That's a lot of words. She also manages grants related to EV infrastructure expansion and greenhouse gas reduction. So this is our panelists for the day, and what I asked each panelist to do is spend 5 minutes just giving an opening remark of their thoughts related to this panel today. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Matt, since he was introduced first, to kick us off.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, you know, we've heard about CSERT a lot. So CSERT is the Center for Environmental Research and Technology as part of the College of Engineering. And, you know, we've been focused for many years on a variety of different things. Of course, air quality is the biggest thing. That's sort of the reason why CSERT got started. But then looking at the air quality issues, obviously there's connections to transportation, which is really what we're going to focus in on today on our discussion. But energy plays a role too. So we're also looking at energy efficiency and how that fits in with the whole thing. So we have a number of great researchers. A lot of them are here in the audience that have been working on these different problems in these areas. We do a lot of vehicle performance testing. We not only do laboratory type of testing, but we test a lot of vehicles on the road to see how well they can actually perform. So that's the true test, right? It's not just focusing on laboratory work. It's really just putting them into the real world situation and seeing how they perform. We also do a lot of atmospheric chemistry. A lot of the secondary air pollutants are just as onerous issue as the tailpipe emissions. So that's another thing we look at. And then we have several energy groups that look at new kinds of fuels, and then how do we tie all this together with the electric grid. So when we talk about electric vehicles, we can't forget about how we provide that electricity. And so that's another important part in dealing with battery technology, the grid, and microgrids and things like that. But you know, in terms of the panel, we do a fair amount of work in these innovative mobility solutions, right? So I think you've probably heard a lot of this in terms of what are these innovative things. So I always like to break it down into 4 things. We have shared mobility, so that's the car sharing, that's the Uber, the Lyfts, and things like that. We have electrification, and electrification is not just the pure battery electrics, but it's also the hydrogen vehicles and renewable natural gas. We have then connected, right? So connected, a lot of people haven't heard too much about that, but giving cars the ability to talk to each other and cars to talk to the infrastructure helps quite a bit. You may not be aware, University Avenue, we have connected signals. So if your car's equipped, it allows the signal phase and timing from the signal controllers to talk to the cars, and then the cars can use that to smooth out their traffic flow. And then lastly, automation. So we've all heard in the newspapers about automated vehicles are going to be here in 5 years, 10 years. It depends on which article you're reading. But there's a lot of potential for automation too, in terms of, again, smoothing traffic, increasing safety, and improving mobility. So these are things that we're working on, and there's quite a bit of work to do, and I think that we can really focus those 4 solutions on improving air quality and a lot of our energy issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ken?
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here at AltCar, or what formerly used to be the AltCar Expo, maybe. Yeah, and share some information about PepsiCo and our fleet sustainability vision. At PepsiCo, we've got a vision to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by the year 2030. This is going to require innovative technology solutions to meet this goal and strong industry partnerships to develop and implement these solutions. To support this vision, PepsiCo recently launched what we believe is an ambitious and transformative initiative at our Frito-Lay plant in Modesto that will serve as an industry-leading showcase for environmentally sustainable manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution, as Annette mentioned. I am the project manager for that, and about a week and a half ago, we had a really terrific event that was attended by quite a number of individuals from CARB and many other organizations. But for this initiative, we are partnering with some key stakeholders, including San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District, CARB, UC Riverside, CSERT, as well as California Climate Investments, and many other technology providers, such as Tesla, Volvo, and others to implement new technologies or emerging technologies. So we're looking at a lot of different things, but we are embarking on a shared vision to build the first scaled implementation of alternative fuel vehicles at a Pepsi distribution location, with the goal of creating lasting impact for years to come. This zero and near zero emission freight facility project is indicative of our commitment to sustainable business practices that lead to innovation, increased productivity, operational excellence, and business growth. While we've done a lot of great work over the last several years to incorporate alternative fuel vehicles in other locations, historically it's been on a small percentage basis, where we introduce a small percentage of new vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles into a location. At this facility, we're going to update the entire fleet. So we're going to transform it from an all diesel equipment to all non-diesel type equipment. So that includes a number of Tesla battery electric tractors. We've got a number of battery electric box trucks. We've got some battery electric yard tractors. A lot of battery electric going on in Modesto, but we've also got some additional battery electric forklifts, and we've got some CNG tractors that will be fueled by renewable natural gas as well. So in addition to that, we will also be adding some infrastructure to provide renewable fuel and energy storage, and this will include a natural gas fueling station that will be public access, so it can be shared with other customers in the area that might be interested in adopting some of these same strategies. We'll also have a 1 megawatt solar carport with energy storage, and very exciting for our employees because it'll provide some covered parking for them as well. We also have some electric vehicle chargers for employees so that they can adopt alternative fuel passenger cars for their own personal use, in addition to what we're doing with the fleet. But then, and then finally, we'll also be implementing some truck charging systems for battery electric vehicles as well. And what I'd like to do is share a short video that goes through some of this project as well.
At Frito-Lay, we lead by example. We have a rich history of sustainability in our manufacturing and distribution operations and have delivered products for over 300 million miles with alternative fuel trucks. As the technology matures, we are eager to further advance our sustainability efforts with at-scale initiatives, which support PepsiCo's mission to reduce absolute greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2030. Over the next 18 months, Frito-Lay is embarking on a transformative effort that will showcase sustainability in manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution operations by implementing emerging pre-commercial zero and near-zero emission technologies for freight operations at our Modesto, California site, one of our largest manufacturing facilities in North America. This innovative effort is made possible through a partnership with San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, the California Air Resources Board, and as part of California Climate Investments, a statewide program that puts billions of cap-and-trade dollars to work, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, strengthening the economy, and improving public health and the environment, particularly in disadvantaged communities. We are transforming our Modesto site by installing a solar energy carport, electric vehicle charging stations for our employees, 2 battery storage systems, and on-site stations for fueling and charging the freight equipment, introducing tractors fueled by renewable natural gas, and adding battery electric trucks, tractors, yard trucks, and forklifts. At Frito-Lay, each step we take toward a more sustainable future is a step in the right direction for our employees, our community, and our consumers. Thank you to all our partners for making this step possible.
As you saw, this is, this isn't something we just talk about. This is something we're committed to, and it's part of our vision to help the environment and be a global leader in this space. We believe this initiative has the potential to become an operational model for all of our manufacturing facilities across the United States. So we're going to learn a lot from this experience and what it takes to implement these kind of technologies, and we hope to serve as a catalyst to accelerate adoption of these types of clean transportation solutions across the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I'm sorry, Matt, I stole your applause before, so if you don't want to clap for Matt, now's the time. All right, next we'll ask Brent Richardson to say a few words.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. So happy to be here in Riverside. I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and one of my heroes growing up was a certain Reggie Miller. This is his hometown, so I'm very excited to be here. I work with Nissan with the Leaf and the EV sales across the country for commercial and fleets, and there is a massive opportunity to grow in that segment. We've seen a lot of growth recently. Weekly, I'm taking phone calls from different companies that are looking to expand their footprint, either to reduce their emissions targets or other reasons to reduce cost. And what we're finding is a massive massive acceptance of the vehicle starting to take place with EVs, which we're excited about. And I look forward to any opportunities to speak with folks who are here today after the panel, any opportunities locally that might make sense. When you think about commercial vehicles and EV fleets, you could talk numbers, or you can just watch traffic go by for a few minutes, and you'll see the number of vehicles that come by, whether it be plumbing, exterminator, landscape. There's a huge footprint out there of vehicles that we have an opportunity to transform to electric vehicles. So I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. I drive a Leaf myself. I've been driving one for a few years, so I am a big proponent of it. And I think that we've got a lot of opportunity to grow even more worldwide, and really look forward to the opportunity to speak to some of you today and also on the panel, and look for any opportunities that we have to grow sales. Thank you.
Okay, and finally we have let Jessica say a few words.
Hi, I'll be kind of brief. My name's Jessica Satoris. I run the environmental programs in the city of Colton, which owns its own electric utility, just like the city of Riverside. And since 2014, we started the initiative to have sustainability as a way of life for our staff and our residents in Colton. And Colton is a disadvantaged community. It's 16 square miles, population of only about 54,000, 90 percentile disadvantage. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And even though we are disadvantaged and funding was an obstacle in the beginning, we learned really quickly, partnering and working together with our neighboring cities and with South Coast Air Quality Management District, along with CARB, we were really able to create this amazing program for alternative fuel vehicles, to rebates for our customers, low income rebates for used electric vehicles, to a climate action plan we adopted in 2015 that supports every employee to get an electric vehicle. We've dedicated our utilities assets to make sure that anyone who drives an electric vehicle to work will have a place to charge. Any department that invests in electric vehicles will have a charger station, and we will pay for that cost for the infrastructure. So that program started, and it kind of has expanded to now we have electric vehicle ride and drive events, not just for our community that we partner, but along with our staff. We feel it's important to lead by example. And if we're going to be telling our residents we want them to drive electric vehicles, well, then staff need to be out there driving electric vehicles. So that's kind of where we started. We started doing an environmental expo for staff. We would invite all our local car dealerships from our friends in Riverside and San Bernardino, because Colton doesn't have any car dealers. And they would come and our staff would get into these vehicles. And I'm proud to say today I have over 15 staff members in our department that drive electric hybrid vehicles. And, you know, for us, we enrolled into LCFS credits, the low carbon fuel standard, as Mary Nichol had mentioned before. And again, people didn't think, well, are we ever going to get any credits? Is it going to be worth it? Well, after 4 years of collecting those credits for a small city like Colton, I actually sold those credits, and now I have the funding to support those rebate programs. We have electric vehicle forklifts. Colton has a large industry of logistics for distribution of products. The economy for logistics in the Inland Empire, I mean, I grew up here, I went to school in Riverside, and as you could see on our freeways, it has not slowed down at all. In all the years I've been here, it used to be you can get from Moreno Valley to Riverside in 5 minutes. Now you're looking at a half an hour to an hour just driving down that freeway. And you wouldn't even want to commute to go to school. I lived in Moreno Valley, and I went to school in Riverside downtown, a little private school called St. Francis de Sales. And you would never do that today. Logistics is booming. Trucks, there's more cars on the road, there's more people living in the Inland Empire. So it's an opportunity to do so much for this community. And, you know, clean air bad air has no boundaries. So we all share in the same basin, and any opportunity that we have to partner to reduce our emissions here is what we're striving for. So thank you for allowing me to be here and share that story with you.
Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the panelists each a few questions, and then we're going to have some open discussion, and we're going to try our best to save 5 minutes at the end for open questions from the audience. That's my responsibility, I guess. Do I get the extra 15 minutes? Because we started late? I get till 10:30? I mean 11:30? Oh. Just checking. All right, so Jessica, since you spoke last, I'm going to ask you the first question. So how critical do you think zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles are to your community, including like off-road heavy-duty construction equipment or other things operating in the community, including locomotives passing through? How critical do you think it is that we get to zero-emission technologies or extremely low-emission technologies for you to meet your goals?
I think, to give you an example, our city has a 3,000 metric ton cap for all new projects coming in. And if you exceed that cap, you could mitigate those emissions by showing me what you're going to do to be the alternate to reduce them. That's one portion of our climate action plan. But we have this big elephant in the room in Colton called BNSF and Pacific Railroad. I mean, they 180 trains go through Colton a day. We're surrounded by 2 major freeways. All the efforts that we've done is just to mitigate, but it's the tip of the iceberg. There's no way for us to actually get to the goals of having clean air until we look at what we can do with those large locomotives. And trucking. I mean, trucks are part of the way of life for the Inland Empire. With the goods movements booming and the more trucks on the road, I see trucks all the time going through our city, and those are things we cannot mitigate. Those are things that are passing through. They may not necessarily live and work in Colton, but they're going through our town. And the way we're like set up on a map, we're surrounded, and it's always going to be a way of life for us. So I hope that there will be more regulation someday on locomotives, and there'll be an opportunity to maybe even partner with them in some respects to see what alternatives they can do to mitigate. There is an industry just in California. You're looking at 10 million to 14 million metric tons of emissions, and that's separate. So I looked that up in 2017. That was their emissions in the state of California. My own little peaker plant only has about 20,000 emissions, metric tons of emissions. One tree will carbon sequester most of that, 24,000 metric tons of emissions. So it's kind of an opportunity there that we're working to strive for, what we can do. I guess our ultimate goal would be someday to have investments in that, and the trucking industry. We have new trucking companies trying to get into Colton all the time. We have some large areas of land for industrial, commercial zoning. And right now, I'm not getting a lot of those companies, would love Pepsi to come, that are searching to be all electric trucks or even natural gas. There is one, CR England, who has invested in LNG. So they are out there, but the majority are still looking the cheapest way to save a buck. And I get that. They're running a business.
Oh, thank you for that. Any other comments? We're good? Ken, I'm gonna go next to you. You mentioned that you have a goal of 20% greenhouse gas emissions reduction by 2030. Pretty ambitious, and congratulations on the Modesto plans. Can you share with us, I know your company in particular has stepped up to be an early adopter of all advanced technologies. Can you share a little bit with us the type of challenges and benefits you've seen with using these advanced technologies? And what is it that the fleets need next to be able to push it even further?
Sure, absolutely. Introducing the advanced and emerging technologies is going to be key for us in order to be able to meet that goal. Just adopting additional, or I guess rolling along with adopting new cleaner burning diesel technologies is just not going to get us there. And we're anticipating growth with the business, hopefully with the help of you as consumers and all. For most of you hopefully have heard of Frito-Lay and Tostitos, Doritos, all the key brands. So, but we're anticipating growth. So what it really means is we've got to, it's a 20% absolute number, which means we've actually got to reduce more than 20% in order to be able to hit that goal. So by adopting or continuing down the path of diesel equipment, it's just not going to get us there. And this is a continuous journey, and we've been on this journey for a number of years. So we've been adopting other alternative fuel vehicles for the last many years, including compressed natural gas vehicles, not LNG, but we have almost half of our over-the-road tractor fleet currently is CNG, our CNG tractors now. So, and we've got one of the largest commercial fleet vehicles or fleets of electric vehicles as well. However, adopting new technology and working with key partners, key suppliers, and looking at some of the advanced or emerging technologies is really where we're going to have to be. And that's where the Modesto project is going to help us, because this is more of a full-scale type of a thing where we're going to convert 100% of the fleet in this particular location. That's a big step for us. Typically, it's a small percentage, and we dip our dip our toe in it first year, and then we start ramping up. If a technology works for us and it shows the benefits that we were hoping for, then we start ramping up. But we learn slowly. This one, we're just diving in head first on this project. So, but again, I think a big part of this is because of the key partnerships we've got with CARB and San Joaquin Valley and CSERT. To be able to have key partners like that is what's going to help make it successful. We got a lot of expertise out there in the industry, and we've got key partnerships with manufacturers as well, including Tesla, and we've got a long history with Volvo and CNG tractors. I think for us, it's just really going to remain, we need to remain focused on our people, processes, and the technology, and being able to make sure we've got those things considered, and making sure that the equipment is right for our fleet and the applications that we're going to be using these for, and that we have the ability to train our people on the new technologies, how to maintain them, how to operate them, those types of things, and make sure they integrate smoothly within the fleet.
What would you say is the biggest benefit of using advanced technology vehicles, both ZEVs and CNG?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. You know, I
Okay.
mean, one certainly is the impact on the environment. Definitely, you know, and just one example is CNG. We've been doing that for almost 8 or 9 years now, and CNG is about 23% cleaner burning than a comparable diesel. However, when you combine it with renewable natural gas, it becomes even better. It becomes a better play as far as the environment goes. It drops it down to about 86% or over, we'll just call it over 80% cleaner burning than diesel. So that's pretty significant, and that's something that I've been working on heavily this year to convert our entire fleet over to renewable natural gas so we can get those benefits. But for us, we've also been able to make it work economically as well. So as Jessica said, you know, we do operate a business. We're a publicly held company. We do have accountability to our stockholders, but we've been able to operate it with the clean technologies and still make it a good business case. So we still get a good ROI and it works. So I think some of the other things that'll benefit the industry going forward, especially with the zero emission vehicles, is they're going to have a lot fewer moving parts, so that's going to reduce the repair and maintenance costs for those types of vehicles. So hopefully we see some improvements in reliability and uptime and all.
I was just gonna ask you about the challenges.
Oh.
You hinted a little bit at the end there, but
I-
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to ask a challenges question too. So I think there's huge opportunities to electrify and do a lot of things locally with the manufacturing and all that. But I think the critical issue comes down to the long haul trucking, right? So, you know, we've heard about these electric trucks that can have a certain amount of range, but do you think electrification is the final solution, and what are the interim solutions in terms of CNG, and hopefully it's renewable natural gas, hydrogen? What's PepsiCo doing with long haul?
Yep, I appreciate the question. Yeah, from a near term, and absolutely, you know, I mean, we have the opportunity to take advantage of a lot of these technologies today. So CNG is one of those interim technologies, and it's also part of this ZANZEF project. So we're going to be introducing some additional CNG tractors fueled by renewable natural gas, so we get that environmental benefit. As you noted, electric vehicles, there's still a lot of development work. They're not commercially available yet. However,
In the trucks.
in the trucks, yes, in the heavy-duty trucks, yeah. Cars, electric vehicles have been available for a while. On the trucking side of the business, there hasn't been anything available yet. So there's a lot of development work going there. And some of the challenges associated with that are range capability. You know, how long does it take to charge these vehicles? For our operation, we've got a number of different applications. We've got 70,000 pieces of equipment in our fleet, and we're largest private carrier in the country. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to use different types of vehicles in different applications. So we have a lot of regional haul vehicles that we, you know, 80% of our routes are 400 miles or less round trip. So that means if we can get an electric vehicle that has the capability of 400 miles, that's going to work very well. A lot of the electric tractors that are being developed today have a range capability of 150. Well, that's not 400, but we have a lot of local delivery trucks also. Perhaps you've heard of Pepsi. They also deliver trucks, and they are typically more city delivery type trucks, hauling beverage trailers or trailers and most of those are 100 miles or less. So that opens up a really good opportunity for us to be able to adopt some of those electric vehicles and introduce them into the fleet and make good use of them until the batteries technology advances to where they become lighter, less expensive, and increased range capability. However, there is a supplier out there right now that is developing a tractor that they are saying will have a 500-mile range capability. So that's also part of the ZANZEF project, and we're working very closely with them and very optimistic about their claims, and we'll see in the next year how well it does.
Thanks, Matt. You took care of that last question for me. Trying to take my job. So next, I'm going to move on to Brent, because obviously we're talking about we need the technology. We need the zero emission vehicle technology. We need, you know, to get down to the lowest emissions possible in a lot of different categories. So this is where a company like Brent comes in. And so my question to him is, how does a company evaluate the need of these advanced technologies, especially ZEVs in particular? You know, it's obviously different going from a car to a delivery truck to a long-range truck. How do companies plan to take into consideration the efficiencies of developing platforms that would result in the ability to ramp up some of these technologies?
Well, when you look at the platforms that are out there, I mean, we work with a lot of different companies to meet their needs. And when you say platforms, it could be anywhere from working with some of the companies through upfitters and vendors to make sure that we get vehicles that meet whatever need that they have out there. And when it comes to the technology piece, that can be anywhere from telematics on the vehicle or different features that we have on the vehicle that kind of is going to lead more into safety, which kind of plays with this. Our goal of going to zero emissions, zero fatalities is a lot of technologies that we have on the vehicle. Such things as ProPilot, as rear cross traffic alert, blind spot warning. We have a lot of different safety and technologies that help the driver when they're out there to encourage both safety and efficiency when they're out using the vehicle. So if a company has a specific need, whether it be I mean, recently last week, for example, I was at a company that does merchandising for a beverage distributor, and they had a network that they were working on, and they recently put 25 vehicles in service that they're going to use, and they basically got it set up. It's going to be a win-win for them because they're able to take some older vehicles out of their fleet. They're also able to go to these vehicles, bring in something that's going to be much more lower maintenance, much lower cost. We worked with them. They've got the chargers installed at the facility, and they're ready to go. And the technology that goes along with zero emissions, and also, again, as I'm dovetailing into safety, they're not mutually exclusive. They kind of play well nicely together. And as the technology continues to grow, and as things like range continue to grow, I think you're going to see more and more mass application for companies to use the vehicles.
Thank you for that. We look forward to seeing those future developments. I'm going to turn to Matt now. As a researcher, what do you see the role of shared mobility in making transportation more sustainable? And what hurdles do you see to make sure that it's an equitable, it's equitable to everybody to use shared mobility?
Yeah, so shared mobility, it's defined in many different ways. You think about shared mobility, and kind of the traditional things are transit, right? So buses and light rail and things like that, taxis. But there is this newer shared mobility that's emerging, that's actually here, right? So you have car sharing programs, so that's a big part of it. And then if you look at these transportation network companies, that you can facilitate sharing of vehicles that way very, very easily too. So if you ask me what's the benefits of doing all this, well, typically a lot of these different shared mobility systems employ these cleaner cars, the alternative fueled vehicles and electric and all that. So that's a plus. But I think the thing that that might not be known is its effect on vehicle miles traveled, right? So typically a shared mobility system, if it's done properly, can reduce the amount of driving that's actually necessary. And there's data out there. There's a lot of papers that show that a traditional car sharing system does reduce VMT. And that's been something that is important to know, and we should be launching more of these car sharing systems. I think Mary Nichols and others mentioned, there's a new car sharing system here in Riverside, the StratoShare system. It's a double where we get hydrogen vehicles plus the car sharing, so it's reducing hopefully VMT as well as getting that benefit with being hydrogen powered. And then the last thing is these transportation network companies. You got Uber, you got Lyft and all that, super convenient. I use it a fair amount. but a lot of the initial data is showing that it's actually increasing how much miles that we're putting out there, anywhere from 20, 30% more. And VMT is one of the worst things when it comes to carbon emissions and pollutant emissions. So I think, you know, in those systems, they do have sharing options, right? You can do a shared lift ride and all these other different things. So we should promote that and try to encourage that. And in general, just get away from the personal owned vehicles and try to do more of these shared vehicle systems.
So VMT bad.
Yeah.
So let's move on to that question, and this is for all the panel members. So you mentioned a few of the ways we can reduce VMT. Some of them are turning out to actually increase VMT. So what other things can we do to reduce VMT?
So I'll just share just an example. As a city entity, part of our climate action plan included that we would have a condensed work week. So that's a whole day that we have staff, and we have around over 300 that are off the road on Fridays. Yeah, we work Monday
40?
through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And ironically, it actually provides more customer service to our residents because people work. So now they can come and visit us before work or after work if they need assistance. So that is one example of what we did to reduce vehicle miles traveled in our city and put that as part of our climate action plan for GHG mitigation.
And I'm sure my CARB staff in the room are gonna heard that, and they're gonna be asking me immediately after this, 4-day work week, right?
AQMD does it.
Go ahead, Matt.
Van pulls are very effective. So van pulling, promotion of that. And then, and again, Mary Nichols mentioned this, it's city design, right? So bike-friendly cities is key. I don't know if people realize, but the mayor actually showed up for this event on his bicycle, right? So that's a good example of how that works. So walking, biking, you know, these sort of other ways of getting around is something that we need to promote.
Okay, Ken?
Sure. Yeah, from a fleet perspective, there are a number of things that we can do as well as, you know, we work with our logistics team every year and we benchmark how many miles do we operate, and we target trying to reduce that every year. Now that's not always an easy challenge because we do have business growth as well, but you know, just the way we load our trailers, for example, is we pick it based on the sequence in the stops and how the deliveries are going to occur. But we also try to sequence our deliveries. In the past, it was sort of left up to some of our drivers to figure out how to optimize it, but now we put them on a specific route so it makes more sense and reduces the miles. And then we also put telematics on our systems as well. So we've got GPS on all of our vehicles so we can track miles and see what the most optimum routes would be for those deliveries. So.
I was going to mention that too. The technology, of course, is always something that helps out a lot to get more efficient routes. That's one of the things I was going to mention. And the other thing, I think, if we are doing, you know, ride sharing, maybe looking at things like maybe like a green line at an airport or something to give preferential treatment to, you know, potentially, or to vehicles that do offer that zero emission service in the ride share, or finding a way to market them more to get them out there. So at least we do have folks who are driving that are going to be in zero emission vehicles as they're doing those VMTs.
I was just going to make the comment again about shipping and freight and all that. So if you go look at vehicle miles traveled, it's still increasing slightly with passenger vehicles. But if you look at the trucking and the shipping industry, it's zooming up much faster. And so logistics is crucial, right? So being able to plan and improve the efficiency in how we move goods is critical. And something that a lot of people don't realize, you know, we all love Amazon, right? We click all these things that we want to purchase. But even the simple choice of saying, let's take all the purchases we want on a weekly basis and just do 1 day per week delivery, that gives the shipping industry a chance to figure out, okay, logistically, let's figure out how to deliver it efficiently. If everyone says 2-day delivery, it's not as efficient and it increases VMT.
Okay, you just made me feel very guilty because I'm an avid Amazon purchaser. That's a take-home message. And I wanted to mention the van pool concept is, I will do a plug for Metro. They actually offer a subsidy. If you have a van pool of 5 or more in a gasoline internal combustion engine vehicle, you get a $400 per month subsidy. If you van pool with 5 or more people in an electric vehicle, like a Tesla Model X, you actually get $500 subsidy. So find your carpooler mates. So it's a good way to save money. I ran the numbers myself, and I figure coming from Long Beach to here, if I'm going to continue living in Long Beach to come to my new job down here, it would cost me $164 a month with 4 other van poolers by the time you apply all the subsidies and share the lease. So it actually saves money too, in addition to, you know, emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So the next question to all of us is, how do you balance reducing greenhouse gas emissions with other core goals such as equity, increasing access, safety, and reliability? Who wants to take that one on first? All right, Ken.
Yeah, for us, you know, again, we're public companies, so we've got to look at what the return investment and what the business case looks like. So we look at that every year. We look at what the initial investment is. But key things for us are to make sure that the equipment is going to be or meet our operational or application needs. We want to make sure that it's safe for our drivers and that it's reliable so we can deliver product every day. And so, you know, there is a balance to when we make decisions on the equipment we're going to purchase for the fleet as well. But you know, I think with partnerships like we have with CARB and others, with some of the incentive programs out there, it helps offset some of the incremental costs to get in or to introduce those types of technologies. But long term, the environmental benefits are, you know, very achievable and very solid and well documented. That we're doing some good things for the environment. And we can make it work from a business case, or we have made it successful from a business case as well. You know, we've got we've got some, on the CNG side, that was one of our key technologies that we've introduced over the last several years. There is a cost increase initially, but we've also partnered with suppliers, and natural gas is a much less expensive fuel than diesel is as well, especially here in California, where diesel can be, well, I just moved here from state of Texas and to do this project, and I've noticed that it's about $1 or more per gallon at the pump than where I was used to. But I think overall, there's a way to balance the economic benefits, the business case, as well as making sure you get the environmental benefits out of adopting new technologies.
Thank you. I want to mention it's actually $2 more. I just got back from Louisiana, and I know the gasoline price was $2.19 at the pump. I got back here, it's so for something. So, and diesel kind of tracks that way. So.
One other quick point on our CNG stations, when we, and this was a very conscientious decision on our part, and I mentioned it earlier, but when we went out and we started considering, we could put stations behind the fence, we could work with suppliers and put stations on our property and all, but again, what we wanted to do was encourage the industry, and so we decided we wanted to make or develop public stations. So the station providers were willing to build stations near our location, so we had good proximity to them because we could guarantee them a certain volume. We've got a very predictable business, and we knew how many gallons we would use, but we also wanted it to be something that was available. So we worked with them. We've got over 20 stations across the country now that support our business, but are also available for other customers to use as well.
Anyone else in this one? Oh, Brent?
I was just going to comment a little bit that in a lot of ways, I think that I guess I'm kind of a repeat of what I said earlier, but there's a lot of technology in the vehicles right now. The vehicle that we have, I don't know if you have a chance to check out the Leaf while you're here. If you do, I'd love to have you. But it's got a bunch of technology loaded in it already from a safety and technology standpoint. reasonably affordable. And so I think that'll, even today, if someone's looking to put in the fleet, I mean, yes, there's other things to consider in terms of cost, and you have to kind of to go through those, but you're going to have less maintenance and better reliability really in the long term. So I think that there's a lot of answers actually available today.
So safer and cleaner cars, that all sounds good to me. And less operational cost. So we all know electrifying vehicles is good for the environment. How do we accelerate their introduction into the fleet as a whole?
Well, I think we have a pretty good incentive program, and we should keep that as long as we need to keep it. But a lot of it is infrastructure, right? I mean, so we know about many programs here in California that are promoting more chargers and other ways of getting electricity to the vehicles. But, I still think we need to look at sort of a comprehensive both electric grid as well as the electric vehicle rollout. I don't think a lot of cities are quite ready yet for a huge percentage of electric vehicles coming online, and so we really need to study that electric grid and EV side of things as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think from a fleet perspective, it's, there's a lot of exciting things going on in the industry and a lot of exciting developments going on with the electric vehicles and so on. But I think for us, it's introducing a project like we have in Modesto to do the Zanzef project, because we're gonna learn a great deal about how to incorporate infrastructure. Big part of this is going to be data collection as well, that to understand operational efficiencies that we're gaining out of this and R&M benefits, and really look at being able to capture the data that allows us to look at the purchase as a total cost of ownership over the life of the vehicle, as opposed to, hey, this incremental cost at the beginning is really, it's not very attractive, but if you look at it from a total cost of ownership over the life of that asset, that makes a different business case, and that's really where we want to go and be able to learn more from this project we've got in Modesto.
All right, I just got the 5-minute signal. So you told me I had till 10:30. You changed the rules on me. So just one final question for the panel before we open it up to anybody who may have questions out there. And this is particularly to Brent on a positive note. In your experience, what have been the most satisfying aha moments that you've heard from fleets when they're transitioning to zero-emission vehicles? Can you share that with us?
Sure. My most exciting thing is when someone who is the biggest resistor to the change becomes the biggest proponent. And I saw that, and it happens all the time. There's always, when you're talking to a group of folks, it's change, it's something new. So when you're always talking to someone, there's the I'm not going to list them, but there's all the concerns of, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work or that isn't. And then, so last week, same company I was speaking to, there was a gentleman that he raised his hand and spoke out. He said, I was the biggest resistor of this, and I've been with these vehicles for a couple of weeks, and he goes, I just got to tell you, I'm a complete convert, I'm sold. And he's a person that's responsible for maintaining the fleet, for doing all the equipment things, and I think his perception of what it was like to drive an electric vehicle versus what reality was way different. I think he was amazed by the torque. They have great pickup. I think he was amazed that one of the most fascinating things people say to me is like, it really drove like a car. It does. It does, in fact. It handles really well, and that's the most satisfying to me, whether it be a retail customer or fleet, when someone gets in and they get it. And once they're in, they're in. They're there for life.
Thank you for that. Well, I have to share that when the first EV1s came out, that was before they really controlled the acceleration. Oh, I took it on a back road and I hit that accelerator. It scared me to death. So, so we're gonna, if anybody has any questions at this point, if you could raise your hand or stand up. If not, I'll ask one or two more questions. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? Okay, we got some. This gentleman over here, I don't know if, hopefully the room's small enough we could hear you.
What are cities doing to accelerate implementing these EV charging systems? Because right now, it's kind of, they're coming on very slowly. There's more coming, but it's just really
Thanks for Jessica.
So I will go ahead and answer this. So in Colton, we have a pretty large multifamily population. So I got a grant with working with South Coast Air Quality Management District several years ago with Todd Borden, who's in the back of the room right now, so I can embarrass him. But I didn't know if this would work. I know there's this great used electric vehicle product out there, and I know it's cheap, and I know I serve a low-income community, so for me, I was gonna experiment. I can't get into multifamily without costing thousands of dollars to put in infrastructure, and I would have to fight them to take their parking spots, which they would never allow. But we have jurisdiction over the curb. So I put in multifamily EV charging curbside chargers at our condensed area off Washington and Colton, where we have the most multifamily housing. Those are used 24 hours a day. I didn't know it was going to take off, and it took off. So I think it's really sometimes, and if you can get grant funding and support, I always encourage cities to do that, any opportunity. My first grant was with the Department of Energy, and that's what started my electrification EV program with chargers. I put them in our hospital and an amusement park locally. Those were, again, once people saw them, they bought the vehicles. So this was just my little experiment to see what would happen. Since then, with our used electric vehicle rebate, I mean, and AQMD has this amazing program. If you have a junker and you are low income, you can get up to $9,800 for a new car that's electric. So I never try to promote anything unless I've gone through the process and know that it really does work and it really does exist. And I had an intern, she wanted to go through the process and turn in her junker, and she was able to. So, you know, partnering with what's out there and supplying what my community needed, it's been the reason why we've been successful with our EV chargers. But I did make the commitment. We have what we call an EV rate. So if you buy an electric vehicle in my city, for free you can sign up for a rate, and I'll give you 250 kilowatt hours to our second tier of energy for free to incentivize you to get into those vehicles. But now I know that you have an electric car. So I know where you live. And anybody who puts in or buys one that's in multifamily, I will make the commitment to put in a charging station curbside near them. Can't put it in their parking spot in front of their house. It has to be public, but we've made that commitment. So I started doing that for every new EV driver that is, you know, next to multifamily.
That's great.
Great, the state's, there's a, popular answer. I saw we have time for one more question. There was someone at the back, now we got three. So somebody at the back was first, so let's. Okay, we're not gonna answer that one. Go ahead, back here.
My question is for Mr. Ken. I am from the Central Valley, so.
Excellent.
And I know there's a large amount of cattle ranches over there. And I'm just wondering if PepsiCo takes advantage of the cow power for their renewable CNG. I don't know if they're doing it right now or if you plan to do it in the future.
No, we are, as a matter of fact. And dairy natural gas or renewable natural gas has actually a better carbon intensity than just regular landfill natural gas. So, you know, if at all possible, we prefer to do dairy gas. But we've got 3 different plants in the state of California that are currently using natural gas trucks. We've got one here in Rancho Cucamonga, just a few miles away, and they are 100% renewable natural gas where we're fueling. We've got one up in Bakersfield or Kern County, and they're 100% renewable natural gas. And Modesto, we just introduced CNG there a few months ago, and we're using our CNG station construction hasn't completed, so we're using some remote stations. However, we've already worked with those suppliers and validated that we are using renewable natural gas for the fueling of those vehicles as well.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up. I did just want to leave a couple of words in your mind as we go to the next panel. You know, we mentioned there's a lot of great incentives that city, county, South Coast AQMD, the state invests millions of dollars in infrastructure. But there's only so much money, right, that could be given out. So I'll let the next panel address that. But I did want to mention that I realized Costco is selling level 2 chargers. Wow. And their warehouse are online. It may be online, but I saw it as I was going through my Costco ads. So level 2 chargers through Costco if anybody's putting in at their house.
Sorry, can I comment on that real quick?
Okay, all right, that's it.
Sorry.
Brent?
Very quick. Just the Nissan Leaf, actually, you can equip it to come with essentially a level 2 charger.
Free, there you go.
And then if you go to Amazon, you can actually order to have you do need the 240 receptacle at your house, but you can actually order online to have someone come and have it installed. So.
Yeah. All right, well, let's thank all the panelists.
All right, thank you all very much. We're going to take just a very short break before we bring our second panel up. We're going to be coming up on lunchtime here, so I don't want to take too much of a break. We'll be getting some food here in a little bit. Can I go ahead and invite the participants of our second panel to the stage?
Where do you want us?
I figured everybody can have a seat and have a microphone, and then we'll want to order. Hi, Casey Davis. Hey, nice to meet you. Any place is fine. I'll probably sit at the end since everybody has a slide deck.
What's the order?
I'm going to find that out right now. And pronunciation?
Impulette.
Impulette. All right, that's what I had. I just want to make sure.
Okay. And Matt Nelson. Yeah. Joe. Where are you with? South Coast. Oh, great. Here, have some water here. Want a glass? Yes. That's got. Oh, it's already used. There's an unused one.
All right, so
10 years.
it'll be you, and then Ken.
Oh, okay. So we're in order.
So you'll go like that. And I'll just sit at the end.
Okay. Do you want us to move down so you can sit here?
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah,
Maybe that makes a little bit more sense. Okay. Okay, yeah, can you go get Ken?
for my presentation, do you want me to sit and do it?
You
Or
can sit, unless you'd like to.
otherwise, I'm just afraid getting in the way of the
Yeah, I was
slides.
thinking that, you stay comfortable, you can sit. That's totally fine. Unless you
Well, maybe I'll.
unless you want to stand, it's totally up to you.
The only thing I was worried about is kind of blocking
Here.
the screen.
The other option,
Just kind of walk
if you want to do that.
Okay, that's a good idea. But on second thought, nah, because I got some notes I
Okay.
gotta look at.
Okay. Okay, everybody. If we could work our way back to our seats, we'll get the second panel going here in just a couple seconds here. All right. Super informative first panel. I think I'm going to have to go spend some time with Jessica and see what's going on in the city of Colton. Maybe we can copy some of those ideas and bring them out to Western Riverside. So moving on to our second panel. The title of this panel is Alternative Technology Infrastructure and Product Investment Opportunities. We have three exciting presentations from three different individuals. The first is from Joseph Impoletti. Joseph is the manager of Technology Demonstration Group at the South Coast Air Quality Management District's Technology Advancement Office. His group works on research, development, and demonstration and deployment of low and zero emission technology, including alternative fuels, renewable energy sources, fuel cells and technology, electric and hybrid electric vehicles, emission control technologies, and low emission engine design. Our second speaker, Matthew Nelson. Matthew is the Director of Government Affairs for Electrify America. Previously served as Chief of Staff for the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Matthew also previously served Senator Dianne Feinstein as the Senior Policy Advisor for Energy, Transportation, and Climate Change for 7 years. And finally, Ken Richley, who is the Marketing Communications Advisor at Southern California Edison and the Customer Experience Group of Customer Programs and Services. Ken is responsible for marketing, education, and outreach for SCE's business and residential transportation electrification programs, including broad EV awareness, charge-ready transport, and clean fuel reward. Ken's other responsibilities, he's got a lot more responsibilities, man. Way to go. Ken's other responsibilities include marketing for net energy metering, clean energy homes, and integrated demand-side management programs. He began his role at SCE in 2004 and has spanned across the company with roles in account management, project management, and most recently, marketing. So please join me in welcoming all of our guests. And to kick things off, we have a presentation by Joseph.
You know what, I'm going to sit down.
Make yourself.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our projects at the South Coast Air Quality Management District, some of the incentive programs that we have, and also some of the deployment projects that we have, mostly pertaining to infrastructure. As we feel that infrastructure is the backbone of getting the vehicles deployed. One of the biggest barriers, I think, to acceptance for electric vehicles or alternative transportation is that range anxiety and where am I going to fuel at? So we're trying to address those by improving the infrastructure. So here first, I'm going to talk about a few of the projects that we have as far as EVSE deployment. First, the Fast Charge project that was funded by the California Energy Commission. Then SoCal EV for level 2 chargers in the workplace. And then also talk about our headquarters and our workplace charging project there, as well as one of our rebate programs for EV charger for residential customers. First, this is a map that kind of shows us the concentration of both level 2 and fast chargers across our air basin here. This project was to deploy 17 DC fast chargers. 17 chargers were installed, were BTC 50 kilowatt DC fast chargers. The project was funded by the California Energy Commission and managed by South Coast AQMD. The locations where these were deployed included shopping malls, restaurants, city offices, and Metrolink stops. This here is, again, the level 2 and DC fast charging map, I'm sorry. This project was for level 2 chargers that were installed across 4 counties, LA County, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. The best practices included partnerships with the cities, counties, and utilities to ensure a smooth implementation and site approvals as well as permitting. Next project here is at our workplace in Diamond Bar, California. Our facility has about 700 to 800 employees, and we have incentives for driving electric vehicles. So we have a pretty good adoption rate. We have 92 level 2 chargers at the facility, and that is not enough. We even had to add a rate onto the charge if you leave your vehicle plugged in after it's fully charged. So to encourage people to move their vehicles so other people can get charged. So we have plans to add even 30 more additional chargers at the district. Another project that is an ongoing project is our residential EV charge rebate. This covers the up to $500 for the charger itself. So far, over 1,100 rebates have been awarded, and most of them were for battery electric vehicles, and then after that, plug-in hybrid vehicles. And those are the most popular models right there. And this is pretty much some of the statistics. Most of the rebates were in Orange County, followed by LA County. Most rebates were for, as I said, BEVs. 10% for low-income households, and those are the numbers of chargers that we've so far paid out $315,000 in this project out of $1 million. So there's still a lot of money waiting for people to apply for this project. Here's some of the other incentive opportunities that we have for our region. This was, again, funded by the California Energy Commission, DC fast chargers. Those are the amounts for each of those projects: $29 million for fast charging, $70,000 to $80,000 for the installation, and that's even higher for disadvantaged communities. Those are other applications there for LA, Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino as well. Next here is some of the other city programs besides ours that are going on within our basin. And as you could see from across from Pasadena to Burbank, Colton as well, as Jessica had talked about. Also, Anaheim has a rebate program, as well as Azusa, and then even Long Beach has a giveaway program for level 2 chargers. This, thank you, Jessica, for your plug for our program. This is the Replace Your Ride program that Jessica was talking about. This is a voluntary vehicle retirement and replacement program where you can scrap your old vehicles and then replace it with a clean, new or used vehicle. And the project can pay up to $9,500 for qualified applicants. Higher funding amounts, are for disadvantaged communities. There are income requirements, and also there are 53 participating dealerships that we're working with the participants who qualify. And also there are consumer protection measures that we include with each of those vehicles that are purchased with the program. These are some of the statistics of the program. The implementation, it started in 15. There's over 5,100 vouchers, amounting to over $40 million that we have paid out so far in this project. 93% of it was for in disadvantaged communities where they have income levels requirements. And also the average replacement model year was 2015 with a fuel economy of 42 miles per gallon. And then the average retirement vehicle was a 1999 average vehicle with a fuel economy of 22 miles per gallon. Now I'm going to kind of switch to our hydrogen infrastructure deployment. This is within our basin. We have funded 21 chargers, or not chargers, 21 stations, hydrogen stations across our basin. And these are for all light-duty vehicles. And most of them were funded through other agencies that we apply for money to. Most of them come from CEC grants that we received, and then we also contribute our Clean Fuels Fund money to those projects. The 3 stations that are still that we've worked on with the CEC are the LAX station, Burbank, and the Torrance station. This is sort of a snapshot. Here's a summary of what the current status of our hydrogen stations, which support about 7,400 fuel cell cars that are leased or sold in California since 2015. Some of the key issues, if you've heard, if you drive a fuel cell car, or you know somebody that does, that there has been a disruption in the supply of hydrogen due to a problem at Air Products facility up in Santa Clara. And the incident at their production facility caused a disruption, mostly in the northern California hydrogen stations. On a statewide basis, there's significant hydrogen fueling capacity to support the number of cars on the road now. However, unexpected station repairs, delays in new station openings, put a lot of stress on the existing stations, including ours in Diamond Bar. That station now, we're getting 2 deliveries of hydrogen per day, and we're still experiencing long lines at our station. These are some of the other activities that are going on across California. One significant one is affects, it's the executive order that targets the low carbon fuel standard, which currently enables the generation of credits for hydrogen fuel sales. This helps the station owners to reduce their cost by applying for these credits. The amendment adds the ability for hydrogen station developers and operators to generate these credits at their station with the capacities, increased capacities are effective as of January of 19. The incentive investment in construction of larger, cleaner stations, it also encourages increasing the amount of renewable hydrogen content from 30 to 40% in order to claim the credit. This is an image of a self-sustaining market. Why 1,000 stations? It's modeled on the existing market for gasoline. This map shows how the concentration of gasoline stations in California and across the state. And today we have about 8,000 of those retail gas stations statewide. And the people know they can get fuel wherever they are and wherever they travel. ARB models were determined that 1,000 well-placed hydrogen stations will nearly match the availability of existing gasoline networks. The statewide network is crucial to establishing customer base, which in turn will create market conditions that encourage greater private investment. So 1,000 hydrogen stations enabling 1 million vehicles reaches a critical mass that allows the market to go mainstream in California. And that's it for my presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Joseph. It's a little concerning when I see that Riverside and San Bernardino County have only accounted for 21% of the rebates. I feel like we need to get our act together and bump up those numbers. But it is exciting to see the discussion on the hydrogen stations. For those that, when we get upstairs a little later on, one of our event sponsors, StrataShare, is up there, and they're deploying an interesting model utilizing hydrogen-fueled vehicles. So we'll move on to our next presentation by Matthew Nelson. Matthew?
Anyone know how to turn these on? Is this on? Oh, it's on. Okay. On my slides?
Okay, well, we're going to do an impromptu reverse of order here. While we get Matthew's slides set up, we're going to go ahead and move over to Ken Richley with Southern California Edison. Ken?
Thank you very much, and it's not afternoon yet, but hi everybody. I'm happy to be here at what used to be the Alt Car Expo, and I think we're going to rename that. I was in Santa Monica last year. It was fabulous. I'm happy to be here, and it's great to be here in the Inland Empire. I lived out here in the Inland Empire for a long time, and I live not too far from here, so really excited to have this here and to see all of you here. In the beginning, Mayor Bailey mentioned that this is a summit where we get to the top, and we get to look down and see what's going on. I'm a hiker. I love California. When I just love the fact I got here this morning and I could see the mountains. I could see, you know, Mount Baldy. I could see Cucamonga Peak, Ontario Peak, and those are the peaks that I like to hike, the Southern California six-pack of peaks. And when I get to the top, the summit, I look down on Southern California, and I'm just thinking, gosh, I am so happy to live in this place. This is the best thing ever. But sometimes I can't see what's down there because, sadly, we have some of the most unhealthful air quality. Still, we've made a lot of progress. Back in the old days when I used to go swimming, I know my lungs would hurt. You remember that back in the old days? It's not like that anymore. So it's gotten a lot better, and we still have a long way to go. Next slide, please. So we have a goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. It is now 2019, so we have a lot of work to do to get where we want to go. Climate change has really impacted us. So I mentioned that things are getting warmer, the air, we are still creating greenhouse gases by burning fossil fuels, and we're making ourselves sick. So we need to change that, and this is what we're talking about today. The governor ordered, the governor's executive order called for 5 million zero emission vehicles by 2030. Again, we have a ways to go to get there. In 2017, Southern California Edison published a white paper, and the white paper stated our position, which I'll be talking about a little later, that stated our position where we believe that there are three things that we need to do. One is decarbonize our grid by producing renewable electrons using wind and solar. Secondly, electrifying our buildings, getting rid of the natural gas burning appliances in our building and replacing them with electric, like heat pumps. And third, what we're talking about today, is electrifying our transportation. So 3 years ago, we took a look at this. Next slide, please. And we found that, and this was stated earlier, 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the transportation sector. So we have the generation, we have the utility sector and transportation sector that are creating greenhouse gases, and I think they need to work in collaboration. They need to work in conjunction, which is why I love to do what I get to do. So this is just the funnest work ever. I mentioned our white paper. In the white paper, we're focusing on transportation electrification, and about 4 years ago, we started developing our first make-ready program called the Charge Ready program that I'll be talking about in a little bit. Next slide, please. So our goal is to get 24% of the cars and light trucks converted to electric. That's 7 million in total. And 15% of the medium-duty trucks and vans, that's 180,000 vehicles in total, converted to electric. And 6% of the heavy-duty trucks and buses, 20,000 vehicles in total. That's a lot. But when we do this, we're going to remove 17,000 tons of gases that are making us sick, that are making us unhealthy. So it's all for the right reason. That's 11 years away. We have some work to do. Next step. Next slide, please. So I mentioned our transportation electrification programs. We launched the Charge Ready program. I'll touch briefly on our light duty programs, where we install a new panel, meter, and service separately from the existing panel, meter, and service where vehicles park for at least 4 hours. And we're putting these in workplaces, multi-unit dwellings, destination centers, and fleet operators. We install the infrastructure. We install the trenching, the conduit, the make-ready stub-out, and the pad where the EV charging station can be installed for qualifying customers. So that's taking care of the light-duty end. Additionally, we have a rebate to offset the cost of a light-duty vehicle. It's our Clean Fuel Reward, $1,000 to anyone who drives a new or used, leased or owned electric vehicle, plug-in electric vehicle. And I'm really happy to say that a couple of weeks ago, I purchased my first plug-in electric vehicle. I figured I had to walk the talk. And I'm really excited. It's not here yet. It's gonna show up sometime in November. And I'm just so excited. I'm looking forward to just divorcing myself from the oil changes and transmission fluid changes and valve adjustments and all those things that are combined when you drive an internal combustion engine vehicle. But the big thing that we're doing that we launched in May, next slide please, is our medium and heavy duty programs. Last year we launched a program called Charge Ready Transit Bus, where we did essentially what we do with the Charge Ready program. We install the infrastructure, the make ready stub out to fuel electric buses. That got rolled into a larger program that we launched in May called Charge Ready Transport, where we're doing exactly that for customers who either purchase 2 new electric vehicles or convert 2 of their existing medium and heavy duty vehicles to electric. So think about that. All they have to do is get 2 vehicles and we will install, if they qualify, we will install the infrastructure on their property to fuel their vehicles. We believe that this is one thing that we can do to get that ball rolling. And Ken, I would love to talk to you about what you did. That is just awesome. So really want to talk to you about that. So we're doing this for electric trucks, buses, shuttles, port material handling equipment. And I should mention at this point what we did in the Port of Long Beach. So in the Port of Long Beach, we replaced 9 of the 24 rubber tire gantry cranes. You know what those are? Those big giant things that pick up the containers off the ships. We replaced 9 of those from diesel to electric, which is it's making a big impact on the air quality in the Port of Long Beach. And then additionally, we installed 20 EV charging stations for yard tractors. So and did you know that in California, well, let's just say 1/5 of all the goods that come into the nation are coming through the Port of Long Beach. So that's a lot. I mean, and think about the 710 corridor, all the vehicles going up and down the corridor. We are doing our part to clean up the air and improve the air quality along those corridors. So the Charge Ready Transport Program is that program that's going to replace these vehicles, these gross polluting vehicles with electric vehicles, and we're installing the infrastructure to support them. We have a goal of getting 8,500 vehicles converted and to put in charging stations on 870 sites. Next slide. And then we talked about rates. Earlier there was a conversation about rates. So we also offer rates to influence behaviors, rates that make it more beneficial for people who charge their vehicles off-peak. And we've all heard of the duck curve. There's a whole ton of energy being generated in the middle part of the day by solar. And by influencing customers to charge their vehicles during that period of time, then those renewable electrons are going into the vehicles. If you think about it that way, it really makes sense. So the nice thing about these rates is that we free up demand charges. There are no demand charges for the first 5 years, and then they are phased in through years 6 through 10. And what this does is it gives the organizations an opportunity to figure out how they're going to be charging their vehicles, how they're going to be running their routes, and timing what they're doing so that they can effectively, at the end of 5 years, they'll have it figured out, and then it'll be easier to address the demand charges. So imagine, if you will, a world where the vehicles that we're driving and the vehicles that are delivering our goods to us are fueled by clean, renewable electrons. That's the future. Next slide. Let's get moving.
Right on. Right on, Ken. That's great to hear. So I got to ask, what kind of vehicle did you get?
Gosh, should I say? It's a Model 3 Tesla.
Yeah, right on.
I couldn't resist.
Well, for everybody other than Ken, all of our panel speakers today will be enjoying an overnight date with Tesla for either the Model S or Model X. So that'll be coming a little later on. I think we're good. Are we good with? All right, we're good. So our final speaker today is Matthew Nelson. Matthew is the Director of Government Affairs for Electrify America. Matthew?
Can I get that? Nice. I'm so sorry. Awesome. Hello. How many of you have ever heard of Electrify America? All right, pretty good audience. How many of you know if Electrify America is a for-profit or non-profit corporation?
For-profit.
Exactly. So Electrify America is a for-profit corporation. Does this work? There. Electrify America is a wholly owned subsidiary of Volkswagen Group of America, and we were created specifically to make a long-term investment in EV charging to the tune of $2 billion over 10 years. We are building the fastest, most technologically advanced EV charging network in the world, and we're doing it as fast as we possibly can, and we're doing it for the long term. The goal is to all our stations feature technology that doesn't even have cars that can use it yet, and that's very intentional. This is a chicken or egg problem. You have to build the charging infrastructure at the speeds that we're deploying in order to convince the automakers to bring the cars to market, and that's what we're seeing at rapid fire now. The cars coming to market now have vastly faster charging capability than the cars that came to market just 2 or 3 years ago. We're a data-driven company. Our goal is to create not just infrastructure, but an ongoing concern to lasting generations to come. This is an industry that has struggled with longevity in the past, and we want to make sure that that we're making decisions and making investments that will be sustainable for the long term. Does this do anything? Okay, so I just say next slide. Okay. The network we're building is represented here on this map. So far, we're building approximately 500 stations in our first cycle. We have 315 stations now open. We're the largest network of DC fast charging in the open network of DC fast charging in the United States. The Tesla Supercharger network is the largest. In addition to building a network along these lines of highway stations, we also build in the metro area. So in our first cycle of investment, we targeted investment to 17 metro areas, and in our second cycle, we've added 29. Added to that for a total of 29. And those are represented by the blue areas in this slide. Our concentrated investment, next slide, is concentrated in California. 40% of all of our investment will be here in the state of California. And in our second cycle of investment, we've actually expanded to concentrate investment here in the Inland Empire. We actually stole this map from the South Coast Air Quality Management District. The boundaries of the Inland Empire are defined as the same way that South Coast does, with the urbanized areas of Riverside and San Bernardino County. We continue investment here in Southern California, concentrated in the LA metro area, which includes Orange and LA counties, and the San Diego metro area. We're also filling in the network of highway stations. We're building on almost every highway in California already in cycle one, but we've got a few gaps. So we're adding additional capacity in the Central Valley, along the 101 in coastal areas near Santa Barbara, and in the high desert along I-40, as well as a few routes in the Santa Cruz area. Next slide. So I mentioned this before, that we're the most technologically advanced. By featuring 350 kilowatt charging, the 350 kilowatt charger has the ability to add 20 miles of range to an EV in 1 minute. We believe this is a game changer. This technology, when Electrify America started, this technology functionally did not exist. It was a lab concept. There had never been, it requires liquid-cooled cables and 350 kilowatts of power in a single cable delivered to a single car. None of that had ever been done outside of a laboratory. It's now UL certified, and it's deployed at more than 300 stations across the U.S. The 68% of all EVs on the road today are used as second cars in the home. So folks that have them don't use them on long trips. The exception to that, by the way, is Tesla. With the Supercharger network, people do use their Teslas as a primary car. But the entire rest of the EV fleet is used basically as a second or third or fourth car in the home, less than 10,000 miles a year. And when you go somewhere far away, you take the SUV. And our goal is to flip that on its head. Everyone that owns an EV prefers to drive it, and if we make it easy to charge, they will use it as their primary car. The second key element of this is we need to make it a customer-centric experience. This needs to be easier and better than going to a gas station. And first and foremost, we need to make the payment easy. So Electrify America's stations all have credit card readers. They also accept basically every form of payment but cash. So you can pay with credit card, you can pay with Apple Pay, you can pay with Google, whatever their thing is called. You can pay with a chip reader or a tap. You can use our app, and we are in the process of deploying something called Plug and Charge, which it allows it's using the ISO I always forget the number 15118 protocol to establish direct communication between the charger and the car. So basically, you drive up, you plug in the car talks to the charger talks to the car, and it initiates a charge. No buttons, no payment, no process. This actually already exists. It's called the Tesla Supercharger. But it is very hard to do that when you're talking about every OEM and every different charger manufacturer having the same network and same communications protocols. And that's what the ISO standard creates. So we're in the process of rolling that out. We want this to be a better experience than what you fuel a car today. We want to take charging from being it was currently cited by customers as the primary barrier to EV adoption. We want to make it the primary attractor. Next slide. This is a rendering of what an Electrify America charging station looks like. This would be an end zone design, which means the chargers are in front of the car. And we share this slide because the charging industry is still rapidly evolving, and there are a lot of different models and different types of stations. Ours are high footprint stations. We have between 4 and 10 chargers at every station. This one is a rendering of an 8-bay station. We use a kiosk model. Every design above 50 kilowatt charging moves the power electronics. In other words, the thing that converts AC power on the grid to DC power that goes into your car. Those power electronics can either be put in the charger itself up to 50 kilowatts, but above 50 kilowatts, it's too big. So you have to move it off of the street corner or the corner, and you need an equipment pad. This is very important for anybody thinking through whether you want to site or host a DC fast charger. High-powered DC fast chargers, which is where the entire industry is going, will require space for equipment pads. And permitting officials and others will have to start to appreciate that this space is necessary. There is no other alternative. There is no way to build a DC fast charger at 350 kilowatts and have no equipment pad. The other thing you see here is a transformer. All Electrify America stations are their own customer. We buy power directly from the grid. And to deliver that level of power off of the grid to a site requires a transformer. By the way, just like every grocery store requires a transformer and every large box retailer requires a transformer, we're a customer actually bigger than those. This station design here uses more power than 1,000 homes. So you need the capability and capacity to add power. Next slide. This just highlights some of the work that we've done, and I'll speak in particular about the bottom left corner, which is our education and awareness campaign. I've talked entirely about our infrastructure, but Electrify America is also embarked on a $42 million brand neutral education and awareness campaign called Normal Now. The concept here is that all the research that we've seen seems to suggest that most consumers view electric cars as something for other people. It's not for them. It's not normal to them. It's something strange and weird. And that's not actually a new phenomenon. It's been the primary narrative of the introduction of every major technology in American society for hundreds of years. It was true of the first cars. It was true of cell phones. It was true of the remote control. It was true of the first hairdryer. It was true of the first dishwasher. And that narrative was true of the first microwave oven. And that narrative is really important to communicate that the public, that EVs are normal now. We're not talking, as has been highlighted all morning, we're not talking about an alternative. We're talking about cleaner cars. We're talking about better cars. We're talking about something that you want. And we think that that is a key area in which to focus the campaign. So the campaign has fun with this history, and it features all of the technologies that have come to modern society that seemed weird when they started. You see here this gentleman is leaning on the first personal computer, the first IBM personal computer, not the Apple. The other technologies, my favorite is actually the hairdryer. I don't know if anybody knows what the original hairdryer looked like, but it was a giant bag on your head that had a hose to it. And it was kind of similar to what you see in salons, but it was in your house. and you'd plug in the hose, and you'd plug in the hose to your head, and plug in the rest of it to the outlet, and you'd sit there for 8 minutes, and it would blow your head up, basically. And that was pretty weird when it started. And now probably 60 people in this room used one of these this morning. And so this is what we're trying to explain, is that electric cars are passing through that same narrative. Next slide. This is just, so I mentioned that we're investing $2 billion. We're doing it over 4 cycles, and our second cycle of investment here in California concentrates on a whole host of different activities. I've mentioned our public DC fast chargers most of all. That is where the bulk of our budget does go, but we're also investing in charging in the residential space, and we've actually launched our first L2 charger on Amazon about a week and a half ago. We are going to be supporting bus charging. We're making a significant investment to support the needs of transit agencies, and we're piloting a charging station that's completely autonomous in the San Francisco market, and meaning that there's no person involved, and using a robotic arm. And we're also investing in level 2 charging in rural areas. Next slide. Our primary business model is to build charging stations at the property of others. So we partner with real estate companies. More than 25 large real estate companies are our primary site hosts. Our largest site host is Walmart. Not too far from here, we have a station that we've built at Ontario Mills with the Simon Properties as our landlord. But what we look for is a safe, 24-hour access, well-lit location where there is something for somebody to do. And if any of you in this room have such a site, and most importantly, you have site control, we'd be happy to talk to you. We want more hosts. We want more station hosts here in the Inland Empire, and we're seeking viable site hosts that meet these criteria. We usually work out some sort of lease or license. Usually, this is a mutually beneficial relationship, so usually there isn't much money transferred, but there is, we bring a service to your location, and it has no cost to you. We pay our own utility bill. We build and fund the entire infrastructure activity. We manage the customer service. We fix the thing when it breaks. There's no obligation on the site host other than to allow us to be there. Next slide. One of the biggest challenges that we have faced in California is permitting. AB 1236 is the best law in the United States. It requires permitting to be expeditious. It requires it to be focused on health and safety, and it requires any permit denial to be documented. It needs to be a documented, well-justified statement of what the health and safety issue is. You would think, therefore, that California would have the fastest and cheapest permitting environment in the United States. Next slide. California has the slowest and most expensive permitting experience in the United States. The average time to permit a station is 69 business days. That's more than 65% longer than the average in 49 other states. Most importantly, it leads to, there are 2 major effects of this. The first is that we have to redesign stations in order to get a permit in California far more often than we do in other parts of the country. Our current distinction on that is we redesign a station here 2.4 times here in California. Think about that. Redesign 2.4 times. We're designing 240% more stations than we're building. Every design costs major engineering dollars. The second, and in comparison, we're well under 1.8 times in the rest of the country. And the second thing is that when a permitting official says, basically, you will build this stone wall or you will not get a permit, we build the stone wall. And that adds cost. And as a result, the stations in California cost 32% more to build, the exact same station. That means California is getting 25% less stations per dollar than the rest of the country. This is the market that needs stations the most, and local government has the biggest opportunity to address this simply by following the state law. Local governments have two obligations under that state law. The first is pass an ordinance that expedites EV permitting. And the second is limit permit review to a building official's determination of whether it complies with health and safety issues. Most jurisdictions in California still haven't passed the ordinance, and those that have often are not quite following it. And so there is terrific positive opportunity. We find that when we get into a jurisdiction early, we can have that conversation, and they can establish a very expeditious, very streamlined permitting process. We've gotten permits in this state in less than a week, and the bell curve is quite large. We definitely get numerous permits in less than 2 weeks, and that attracts more investment. Be clear about that. Let me say that again. That attracts more investment. We will build more stations in markets with with a cost-effective permitting system than in markets that don't. And that's just a straight-up simple business decision. Next slide. The other thing that can be done locally is adopting EV friendly policies. And that's actually harder than we all think, because there are a lot of EV friendly policies that don't actually help with EV adoption. We found that when we measured across the country which market had the most EV friendly policies, Phoenix, Arizona had the most. Phoenix is not the most EV-friendly climate. It just had the most policies. Those policies weren't very effective. And so we actually asked the National Association of State Energy Officials to evaluate which policies work. And they produced this study last year in partnership with Cadmus, where they evaluated how they basically created a scorecard. And any local jurisdiction or any local community can evaluate themselves on this scorecard and see where they stack up. It's a 100-point test. Many California communities are up in the 80s and 90s, or 70s and 80s, but there's still a lot of work to do. And so we always point to this when folks ask what can be done locally. We just point folks to NASIO's analysis of what really works. It's they relied on a lot of research by UC Davis and by the Luskin Center at UCLA, and other, the National Renewable Energy Lab, to really focus in on the policies that have a statistically proven effectiveness. And it's something to take a look at. So thank you very much. By the way, we are a small and nimble team. That is our entire company in this photo. And we all wore the same shirt for a very brief moment. But we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit about ourselves. And our goal, even though we're a nationwide company, our goal is to be a locally relevant entity that's helping communities with their EV adoption goals. And anything we can do, please follow up with me, and my colleague Tony Gonzalez is here as well. We're happy to be a resource, and please view us that way. Thank you very much.
Right on. Thank you very much, Matthew. I know everybody's getting ready for lunch, so we'll, if there are any questions from the audience, we've got a mic that can be brought around. Yes, ma'am.
I am a single person. My only car is an electric car, and I charge it at home, and there were fires, and they might cut off my power. So what do? What are you going to do about people who have no place to charge if the power goes out? Any solutions there?
That's a great question. Anybody on the panel? We have somebody from Edison here.
I have
Maybe they
no
could,
way to get anywhere. I mean, I just figured out, that's it, my only car. That's
Thank you. That sounds like a question for a utility, so I'll go ahead and take that one. And thank you for, first of all, congratulations. Only vehicle, electric vehicle, that's awesome. 4 years, that's fabulous. So there are, I mentioned that I also market our net energy metering programs for our solar, for people who install solar in their properties. So it's an extra investment, it's another thing, but we also offer incentives and rebates to offset the cost of installing solar on your house, and you can also have on-site battery storage. So there's that. We'll talk offline. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about this.
They said on the radio that if you had solar during the fires, it wasn't going to help because solar generally put the power back to the grid.
It does, and the thing that you would have to add here would be battery storage. So we've heard of the Tesla Powerwall, which is a battery backup. You could top off your battery with your solar and then discharge your battery into your vehicle to fuel your vehicle. So there's that option. And I was thinking about this, and then, sometime in the future, we're going to be talking about other more exotic things like vehicle to grid, where the vehicle can then actually discharge the energy back into the grid. But for now, I think the answer for you would be, if it was just you and your property, I would say battery backup would be the quickest thing that you would do.
20 to 50 grand to install.
Well, depending on where you live, you could utilize the PACE program. We'd be happy to help you finance that.
Oh, okay.
Are there any other questions? Going once. Oh.
This question is more directed towards Joseph. You talked about some of the challenges to the hydrogen fuel supply going on right now. What do you see as some solutions to that to establish more reliable fuel supply for hydrogen vehicles?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is that we only have a few sources of hydrogen, namely Air Products, but they've been there for us to start the industry and get us going. But you need to have more sources, more diversified sources. Air Liquide is also jumping in the game, and they're going to build a large facility here in Southern California. That should help in the future, but we need to get more of these hydrogen producers out here and building facilities to support it, because you can't, if you just have a single source, that source goes down, the whole industry suffers.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any other questions? Oh, just a second, sir. There you go.
Capacity. The fast charging capacity of 150 kilowatt, 300, the vehicles have to be equipped to handle that. Do you see light duty vehicles manufacturers heading that way?
Absolutely. What we have seen when we started building, when we announced we were going to build 350 kilowatt chargers and 150 kilowatt chargers, there were no cars in the market above 100 kilowatts. Not one. Now we have, and almost none, other than Tesla, almost nothing above 50. Just since then, we've had the Hyundai come out with 75 kilowatt, 70 to 80 kilowatt actually, and so did Kia. We have the Jaguar above 100. We have the Audi above 100. We have the Porsche at 270. We have the Bolt, widely reported, will be above 100 by next year. We have the Nissan Leaf at 100, the new Nissan Leaf. The Mercedes is going to be above 100. So our theory was, if we build the maximum capacity that the standard allows, which is 350 kilowatts, that all the automakers will then choose the vehicle that their batteries technology can handle, and they'll push it as far as they can. And that theory has proven out correct. Not every automaker is jumping because of their battery capability. They're cautious, so they're not jumping from 50 to 350 overnight, but they're all moving rapidly up that scale. And even a 75 kilowatt charge compared to a 50 kilowatt charge, it's twice as, it's 50% faster. And And it really is changing the experience. And I didn't emphasize this, so let me emphasize it now. A 350 kilowatt charger will charge at whatever speed the car says it wants. And so a 350 kilowatt charger can charge at 350, but it can also charge at 25. It can also charge at 50. It can also charge at 220. And so that's what we see is the automakers are all bringing product to market that uses faster charging, and over time they will rapidly go from 50 now to 350 in the near future. And actually some of the heavy duty folks are seriously looking at 500 plus. And so it is going that way very quickly, and we think it's entirely as a result of getting the network out there that the vehicles can use. We had in one of my slides, it highlighted that just about 3 weeks ago, we did the first 800 volt DC fast charging moment in the US. And that 270 kilowatt charge on a Porsche Taycan, it recharged and added almost 300 miles of range in 22 minutes. That is what we need. That is the gas station experience. That is, you're on a long trip, you stop after 2 hours of driving, you stop, you plug in, you go inside, you use the restroom, you get a cup of coffee, you come back out, and the car is charged. That's our goal, and we think that charging level can do it.
That's awesome. All right, probably have time for maybe one more question before we break for lunch. Oh, okay, 2 more questions. This gentleman had his hand up as well.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, you were saying that Electrify America wants to make the whole charging experience or fueling up your car better than it is at a traditional gas station. Well, something that you said, time is money, people are impatient, 22 minutes. Have you thought about, as people convert more to electric vehicles, we have lines at gas stations, how is that going to be 22 minutes to charge? You have a bunch of people waiting. How do you have a vision for that, about how that's going to work, or how the technology is going to catch up and make charging faster?
Yes, a couple things, and I'll make this quick. We never build less than 3 DC fast chargers, and we've upped that now. We never build less than 4, so going forward. So that means that there's always duplication at a station. And the second thing we do is we do not power share. So this is in the weeds. I apologize for this, but I'll do this quickly. One easy way to save money on designing an EV charging station is to provide, say, 8 places to charge, but only the power capacity to charge 4 vehicles. And so when 8 folks show up, the power gets split up, and everybody gets half as much power. And it's a completely acceptable business model. It does save you a lot of cost because those power cabinets are not cheap. It substantially lowers the cost of building a station. The flaw is your station charges vehicles slowest when they are busiest. And we want this to be a good experience. We want you to be able to go and get turkey dinner on Thanksgiving and not wait in line and not have the charger take longer than normal at that time. So we do not power share. We dedicate entire resources. And then finally, to your point of queuing, we unfortunately, we don't face that challenge today because we built such large stations. We do average more than 6 chargers, but as we move into the world where there are more vehicles out there, we're working on adding to our app the ability to schedule charging. And that is if we ever get there, that's going to be a capability that we'll offer. So you can schedule in advance that you're going to use the charger at a certain time, and then it's reserved for your use. It's not there now. It's not necessary now, but that is something we're aware of. We want to make sure it's a customer-centric experience.
Okay, thank you. All right, last question, sir.
Yeah, my question's about CHAdeMO. I was at an Electrify America station in the East Coast, and there were 10 slots, and one was CHAdeMO. And it's just Nissan, I suppose, at this point, because Kia's switched to CCS. But what's the status there? I mean, do we think that's going to go away? Is Nissan going to come around? Do you have any thoughts on that?
You'd have to ask Nissan what Nissan's going to do. But we make sure that we have both charging standards at every station. We have chosen to have more CCS than CHAdeMO capability for the exact reason you just identified. Nissan Group is the only user of CHAdeMO in the U.S. market today. It's not just Kia that switched. Kia, Honda, Hyundai, Subaru. We believe Mazda will switch when they come to market. So it's arguably a proprietary standard at this point because it's only used by one OEM. But that's not the basis of our decision at all. The basis of our decision is we're trying to create the best customer experience possible, and we want to make sure that we have the capability to charge the vehicles that will be in market. And it appears that all the OEMs are bringing vehicles to market using CCS, so we wanted to make sure that CCS capability was in as many locations as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, at this point, we're going to break for lunch. I'd encourage everybody to work your way upstairs into the exhibition hall where you see all of our vendors and vehicles on display. We'll have a brief time for lunch and do an award ceremony. So before we go, can we give a round of applause to our panel? Hey, it's an overnight date with Tesla. It's part of their sponsorship that they gave us. Yeah, for sure.
Do you mind just giving it like an open?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Let me get this stuff
Oh
out of
yeah,
the way.
yeah. We'll get your notes.
That way you don't have to deal with that.
1 second.
Yep.
It's like glossy letters and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? You want to do the motion really quick? Just
Yeah.
Quick open. One more time, please.
Okay.
Excellent hand model. Ready? Go for it.
We'll good? We can do it later if you need to.